Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
Hey, how is it going, everybody? Just want to welcome you guys to the next episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have Henna Pryor here with me. And real quick, give you some of the highlights. Former Kforce recruiter. She was actually the number one recruiter year after year over there. And I'm from Tampa myself, so I know Kforce very well. It is a great organization, and it takes a lot to be on the top there. Right now, she has also opened up a executive coaching business. And one of the things I'm actually most excited about talking with her today is she's opened up a training program and sales program teaching recruiters that to help them understand copy. And I know copy for me is a whole brand new world. I feel like I'm walking into, Harry Potter world, just with how complex and how amazing putting the right words together can do for your recruiting organization. So definitely want to talk with her a little bit about that. But let's go ahead and jump in. How's it going today?
Thank you, Ben. That was very nice. I appreciate all the kind words. And I spent many a day in Tampa. Anytime we had a training or a corporate event, I get to fly down there and enjoy the sunshine, which is a nice departure from the Northeast weather I'm experiencing in Philly right now. So appreciate all the kind words.
How many years were you over at Kforce?
So just over 14. So
okay.
I like to say that I grew up there. I started there in my early 20s. So I had a couple-year career in Big Four public accounting out of college, and then pretty much was an entirely Kforce after that. And it was a run like no other.
How'd you go from accounting to Kforce?
Well, it wasn't actually that big of a leap. So my accounting career, I was a finance major. I landed at EY, and just because you're good at something doesn't mean it makes you feel alive. And so while I was good at numbers and auditing, there was something very strong in me that said, you are not made for this. So I managed through a few years and was looking around at what can I do that involves talking to people and really using my people skills. And actually a former manager from EY had gone to Kforce to do finance and accounting staffing. And so she said, here, you can use your skill set. You can be knowledgeable of this industry and what we do, but you'll use it in a new way. And I think I fought with her and I said, I have a CPA and a master's in accounting. I can absolutely do no such thing. And at that time, the market was super hot. So she said, listen, try it for 6 months. If you don't like it, I'll place you somewhere else. And then 14 years later.
And you were one of the top recruiters there, multiple years.
Yeah, I was always top 10%, every year top 10%. There was only 1 year that I just was shy of it, and that was the year my daughter was born, and I took quite a lot of extra time off. But outside of that, even the year my son was born, I was top 10%, even despite the 3-month break. And I'm very grateful for that. I think what was fun about my run there is that I had to reinvent the way I worked more than once in order to stay top 10%. Because
can you talk about that?
I'm a hands-on mom. I'm a really hands-on mom. I don't have a nanny. I don't have live-in grandparents. My husband is also in sales and works full-time. So it's he and I, raising our kids. And the prevailing wisdom in staffing is in order for your income to measurably increase, you have to put in an equivalent amount of hours or effort. And I just couldn't subscribe to that. I said, there's got to be a way I can stay here or even get higher than here, but just be a lot smarter and more intentional about how I'm using my time. And so, not to get ahead, I think that's where sales copy and sales messaging really came into it. But there was a lot of, creativity and reinvention that contributed to those numbers.
And it's one of the things, like, I know Kforce well. I grew up in Aerotech, and it's, hey, stay till 7 o'clock, stay till 8 o'clock. I remember one of the times I was like, hey, I just made 3 placements today, and they asked me to stay till like 9:30 at night it felt like put in the time. And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. At the beginning, I don't want to take anything away from those early stripes though. Right. I think at the beginning you do have to put in that elbow grease and put in the time, because you don't have a relationship book. You don't have a pipeline. And frankly, people don't know who you are. And so some of that does come from putting in that extra effort at the beginning. But I don't subscribe to people that have been in the business for 15 years that are still telling me that in order to succeed beyond their wildest dreams, they have to work until 9 o'clock. To me, that's something is not working as well as it could, and you're spending extra time doing things that are not serving you as effectively as they should.
Now, you said that like during your reinventions that copy was one of the things that really like you discovered and stood out. First of all, like how did you discover that that was the thing that helped you succeed?
Sure.
And can you kind of like break down like some of what how you're utilizing that and are now teaching people to utilize that to be successful?
Yeah. So I wish I could tell you that there was some big discovery moment, but it simply boiled down to probably about, 8 to 10 years ago, I started to notice that, the rhythm of cold calling was I was leaving a voicemail and I was sending an email. And I started to notice every time people were responding to my email before they responded to my phone call, or they would respond to my phone call and say, got your email. So It became very obvious to me that that rhythm for just human behavior was starting to change. That, and I think the one that feels very obvious to us today, I started to just notice that people weren't picking up their phone that much anymore. It was like all I did was leave voicemails. There was very little chance, and there was a transition period. People used to pick up their phone. Those of us who grew up in the business remember when people used to pick up their phone. They don't anymore, and they have stopped doing that for some time now. And so I think I was really just honest with myself about that change in behavior. I don't think I tried to poo-poo it away as just a bad day. I think I really was honest and said, hey, buyer behavior is changing. People don't want to pick up an unknown phone number anymore. They're more receptive to a well-composed email, and they're more likely to respond to my phone call if I put some effort into the email. I'll be honest, I thought everybody else was making that discovery right along with me. I thought that maybe that was sort of an obvious thing that was happening, and realize now that that was not so much the case, that to this day, there are still people.
I was going to say, like, I feel like,
dial.
The amount of emails that I personally get, I'm like, I have no clue where my resume is or out there, what database it's in. I'm like, really?
Yeah. And so I was self-taught. I mean, I realized early on that what I wrote made a huge impact in the amount of responses I got, both electronically and via phone.
Okay.
And so I decided to really hone in and figure out what was working, what wasn't, and kind of made it a mission of mine to make every email I sent really count. If I'm going to spend the time, if I want to get home to my kids, I got to make it count.
Were you keeping up the same KPIs as the people around you, or did you just make everything count more?
No, absolutely. I think I still kept up the same KPIs. Okay. Here's what I would say about that. People say, well, do you have to do less if you do that? I'm not talking about doing more or less. What I'm talking about is whatever it is you're doing anyway, just do it better. Like, you're already sending these emails all day. Just make all of those emails better. So it's not necessarily about less, it's about effective.
And that's what I kind of wanted to hear from you. And so other people can hear the same thing. It's like, because I've actually heard a few people say like, hey, do less, but make more matter. Why not keep where you're going and just make, like what you said, make it more effective?
Sure. And, if I have to work less, I will. If a kid being sick dictated it, but that was not an excuse to start doing less if I had the energy to do more.
And jumping into this, you moved over to executive coaching after Kforce.
Yeah.
And you're still doing that. Can you talk about that and then the transition into your now training company that you have?
Yeah, I do both, which is really fun, and honestly was not the roadmap. It was not what I was planning. So the long story short of that is that, people all expect me to say, oh, you finally burned out of staffing or you finally had enough. To the contrary, I loved every minute at Kforce. They treated me extremely well. I'm still extremely close with our COO, Kai Mitchell, and a lot of the senior leaders there. I'm still in touch with them. It was a very difficult decision to leave. And ultimately, I left on top. I was still top 10%, making phenomenal money. It was not an easy decision. What it ultimately boiled down to was that I felt like I had a bigger impact to make. I wanted to reach more people more deeply than I could inside of a publicly traded company. I think Kforce, one of the wonderful things about it was a big $2 billion company with tons of resources, but it's a publicly traded company. I had to a degree, do things their way and my way. It wasn't entirely my way. And part of me was really hungry to see okay, what's on the other side of this? And the second part of that is what we do all day in staffing. All of us we're convincing people to lean into their edge and to maybe try something outside of their comfort zone or to take a chance on something. That's what we do all day. And I had a moment in my life where I realized I wasn't living into that as fully as I could have. And so I took the leap. I got coach certified and never looked back.
Okay. And I also talked about a little bit about your training company that I've actually been seeing. Yeah, I've been on LinkedIn and I've been seeing people saying great things about that.
Oh, thank you. So again, it wasn't by intention. I really didn't leave staffing with the intention of even being part of the staffing world. But what happened is when I left, I started to see through my coach training is heavily based in psychology. It's a lot about human behavior, how people think, what they hold to be true, what they hold to be effective, how others respond to people. That's a lot of what, coaching is about. And underneath that, what I started to realize is the things that made me very effective as a recruiter were largely rooted in psychology. And so there's a few different things I train on, but the one that's really picked up a ton of steam and where everybody's gotten so excited is I believe deeply in the power of written psychology. This is how people communicate these days. And so when we talk about effective email and sales copy and sales messaging, what we're really talking about is written psychology. How do you appeal to someone through the written word in a way that impacts them deeply enough to say, hey, I want to work with this person. I want to respond to this person. I want to see what this is about. That's what we're doing. And that's where the opportunity to improve in our industry is super sky high. People don't do this very well on the whole. Some do, a lot don't.
Is there for the people that are listening to this podcast, is there a tip that you can, I feel like this is something that's all encompassing, takes a lot of time, but is there a tip that you can give them that kind of start them on that path towards that?
Yeah, sure. I can give 100, but I'll start with the one that is the biggest offender. So if you're listening to this and you're starting your email with, hi, I'm John Smith from XYZ staffing firm. I have 10 years of experience in this and this kind of placement. Please reach out to me. Stop doing that. That's the number one killer of emails. Too many folks in staffing, either recruiting or BD, are leading from this place of I, me, and they are getting immediately deleted. It's the nail in the coffin right out of the gate. So if one thing could change, honestly, it would be that. But we could also spend hours talking about subject lines and content and structure and a million things. But that's my number one. So
you're saying that everybody's focusing on me, when really they should be focusing on
you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your prospect, you can tell them about you later, and you will. I'm not saying that you don't put your credentials into it somewhere, but your prospect wants to be the hero of your sales message first. They want to feel like you are there to meet their needs, not yours. They want to feel like this is someone who understands me and understands what I'm going through right now, professionally, personally, industry-wide. That's the place we should be leading from. That's the place where all astute, shrewd sales messaging folks lead from. And that's something that is, unfortunately, something 90% of recruiters or sales folks don't do in our industry. They all lead from this incorrect place. And then they wonder, gosh, the market's dead for these people. No, the market's not dead. Your message is dead. Your message needs CPR. It needs resuscitation, So that's a big one.
This is a question I actually asked every single person on the podcast, or one of the few questions.
Yeah.
So somebody getting started or somebody in a rut, I know the advice on actually changing your messaging is super important. Is there anything outside of them that you would give as a piece of advice to become successful or, as successful as you were in the recruiting chair and now as successful as you are now in the executive coaching chair?
Yeah, my number one piece of advice that I think has served me extremely well, both in my staffing career and has contributed to my, unbelievable, humbled success in this past year, has been embrace experimentation. Way too many people are told by their leadership or their friends or a book they read or some podcast or whatever, that this is the way. This is the way to do it. There are fundamentals that are important. And so I'm not saying to ignore all of the experts. A lot of us know what we're talking about. But what I am saying is experiment. See what's working for you. See what's not. I think one of the things that led to a lot of my success before and continues to is, when somebody said, you need to leave this kind of voicemail, I would leave one of those and I would leave something a little different that felt more like me. And when somebody said, this is the email structure we should use, I would try one of those. Then I would try something else that felt a little bit more like me. And through that process of experimentation, I found out maybe a bit more quickly than my peers what worked for me, and anything that's my voice, my style, feels good to me, I'll do more of, and I'll do it better. And so early on, at Kforce and early on in this journey, I was never afraid of experimenting and doing maybe something a bit different, zigging when people zagged, just to see how it felt. And it's paid off over and over and over.
And you kind of mentioned, reading books. I love doing deep dive in books. Just, you never know what you pick up. Is there a book that you would recommend that's had a major impact on your life?
I have a lot. Yeah, no, I have a lot. And I was actually thinking about this because I have 5 sitting next to me right now as we speak, and probably 5 more on my nightstand. I would say one of the ones that's honestly had a very big impact on me, and it's a quick, short read. It's called The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier. You can read it in an afternoon. It's like a super fast, easy read. The Coaching Habit, and his name is Michael Bungay Stanier. Here's what I like about it. He's a coach, but what he does is he gives you almost like a shortcut, 7 questions to getting to the heart of an issue. So he teaches you 7 really effective coaching questions. I would maintain this book is as powerful for staffing professionals as it is for executive coaches. Okay. The reason is we're dealing with people. We're dealing with people. And the biggest issue that our clients and candidates face right now is that they feel like we're all the same, and they feel like we don't see them and hear them. And this will help you do that better. Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually going to order that on Amazon as soon as we're done with this podcast.
And he's a hilarious Australian to boot. So if you ever listen to him online, he's an Australian guy with crazy hair. He's awesome.
Maybe I'll pick up the Audible too if it's on Audible.
His voice is fantastic, so you won't regret it. Yeah.
Real quick, I know I will have the notes of how to get a hold of your copy clinic in the notes below, but can you run us through that real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So if they want to check it out, any details on it, I just finally released the digital version of the program. So it's just recruiterscopyclinic.com. We'll have some details, but largely I actually do it live. So leadership will come to me and say, hey, our team needs to get better at this. And I've been doing it live with teams. And when I say live these days, it's obviously over Zoom. But the part about this whole program to me that's really fun is that lest anyone confuse it, copywriting and sales messaging is less about, perfect sentence structure and punctuation and spelling and using big words. In fact, you're going to hear me say right out of the gate, stop using big words, stop overthinking this. And what I'm trying to capture is the humanity in messaging. People respond to people that feel like somebody they'll vibe with. And so what we're doing is we're reinventing the way we've been taught, this stiff corporate deletable stuff that we've been taught. And what happens as a result is every one of my students, the results have gone way up. Their responses always go way up. But the best part, the second bonus that comes along with all of that is everyone's like, this is so much more fun. Oh my gosh, this was so painful before. And I'm having more fun again because I feel like I'm me in my messages, and that feels good. And I didn't think I was allowed to be me in my messages. So it's really powerful on a number of fronts, but it's very encompassing. So the website has some more details on what's in it, but I also have an outline that I can share if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn.
And I absolutely love that because I know a lot of, executive coaching and, coaching is typically focused on, building the business bigger and doing this. But if you're able to sit there and bring the humanity back into recruiting, I feel like that's one of the reasons that I fell in love with recruiting is just the impact that you have on people. And you hit the nail on the head earlier on in our conversation. You sometimes just forget about that in the monotony of, what we're doing day in and day out. So that's super exciting, the impact that we're having.
I love the idea of just the next turn of the wheel, because I think a lot of us are really good at doing it on the phone or doing it on Zoom. We're very much ourselves when we talk to someone. We talk about, wow, did you see how bad the Eagles stunk again? Or, we do this stuff very naturally in dialogue, but somehow in staffing, there was this block that came up between being that on the phone and then being that in writing. And the writing version of people has historically in staffing sounded nothing like the other version. And so really, if I could have one goal, let's make it all match again. Let's bring this back together and stop having such a divide between them.
And that's actually why I wanted to bring you on this podcast, just because, I think it was a month ago you started talking about this. I was like, you're onto something.
And it's so simple. It's not, I'll tell you, when I first started creating the program, I refused to believe that no one had been teaching this yet. I said, what on earth has everyone been, why am I the only, but then, you realize that sometimes it's the obvious stuff that can feel the most daunting or scary. And so it's hard to break it apart, but it's honestly, I have so much fun with it. And just the results that people see are, to me, so they bring me so much joy. People are just enjoying it again. And they're starting to see these connections build from their prospects. Even if the prospect says, you know what, I'm really not looking right now. I love my job, but I just had to tell you that was a great message and I had to respond. To me, that's ding, 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 you won. You won the grand prize, because now that person's in your orbit. You didn't get deleted, and that's worth everything in this business.
I mean, those calls come back later.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's, people would say, how do you grow your business? And referrals don't happen only when you place someone. Some of my biggest placements were people that were referred to me because I just was really organic and genuine, both in person and in my writing with that person. And they like that. That personal touch makes people refer you to others. And so the more of that we can bring back to our writing, truly the power in it is not to be understated.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I know we're a little short on time, so happy we can wrap this up.
Sure.
Any last piece of advice that you would want to give anybody before we go?
Let's see. I could give 1,000, but I'll distill it to 2 pieces of advice. My first is, whether it's me or whether it's someone else, please make it a priority in 2021 to write great messages. No more stale, generic, cookie cutter, dry messages. Your prospects, your clients, your candidates, they're sick of it. They're over it. They don't want it anymore. And it is on you as a recruiting and staffing professional to get better at it. Let that be a development opportunity. Again, if it's not me, find someone who will. But this has to be a priority for 2021. Otherwise, our entire industry looks bad. So it's on all of us to make this better. My second piece of advice, and this is just a little bit more general, but maybe more coach-like, is please, again, experiment, take risks. I know that we all come into this business with a set of tools that we're given. Here's how you address objections. Here's how you respond to this. Here's how you cold email. Those things worked for the person who did them. But if they don't feel an integrity with your voice, or they feel like you could do it in a way that feels more genuine to your style, experiment. You can always go back and do it the other way, but don't be afraid to try something new.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. For everybody that's listening, I will actually, in the notes underneath the podcast, I will have the information to get a hold of you, and also some information on actually to check out some of your copy classes and your executive coaching. Awesome. I know I've personally been impacted by watching what you're doing with copy. So if you are not following, I will actually also have her LinkedIn profile in the notes too, so that way you can find her on LinkedIn and actually check out even just the day-to-day messages that she is putting on LinkedIn. You get inspired on changing your own copy by actually reading other people's amazing messages and how they're writing and how they're impacting people.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So thank you guys for listening. I will talk to you guys later, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast with Benjamin Menna. If you enjoyed, hit subscribe and leave a rating.